Hello gamers, welcome to another Zenless Zone Zero video. I'm Gold Demon and I want to talk about what characters could potentially be getting buffed in the future and how I would buff them. So the point of this video is really just a little fun, thought experiment of how I would like to see some buffs played out in the actual game, seeing that Zenless is open to, of course, buffing and having, closer levels of performance for their limited 5-star characters, as seen with the Ellen Jo buff, where she's getting not only her move implemented from Hollow Zero, but even a brand new move, as well as some other quality of life things like improving her flexibility as an agent by buffing the additional ability, but then also the massive buff that she's getting from her core skill, where it's going to also apply to her other moves. So I figured, why not go over the other agents to see what other buffs I'd like to see in order to improve their performance, as well as enhance their gameplay. I'm going to go in release order, and this video will only include the limited characters. I won't be doing any of the base characters or the 4-stars, as I don't think they'll be getting buffs apart from the buffs already mentioned, where a bunch of supporting characters are getting the ability to be used with the new agent specialty. If you do want to see another version of this where I would buff the remaining characters that I leave out, then don't forget to like, comment, subscribe down below that you do want to see this additional content, and I'll get that out. I'll be going in release order, and so with that leaves us with our first 5-star DPS, Zhu Yuan. The thing is, Zhu Yuan realistically isn't all that bad, it's just she faces a really rough vertical investment potential. What I mean by that is that her dupes and her weapon are particularly weak, especially when compared to other DPS. Rather shockingly, her signature weapon is only about a 2 to 6% increase over some free-to-play alternatives, which is comically low, where you're wondering really what went wrong here. Typically, signatures in these games have around a 30% increase in overall damage, but this one just didn't have that, despite the fact that she is, well, a limited DPS. It also has a goofy restriction to having a certain number of charges to where you don't even get full uptime on her own buff, which is just really weird limitation. As for her dupes, if you know anything about her typical combo, you get about 2 mags off during the stun window, if it is a normal stun window and if you don't have any reductions in stun. This is a problem particularly for M1, which gives you a quick reload, which is supposed to give you shells back during your combo, but again, as per her regular stun combo, you already get full mags off and you never even really make use of the M1. Especially given there is only one character right now that you don't even use with her that extends the stun window to where you might actually make use of something like this. Her current partner, Qingyi, doesn't even increase the stun window, so once again making this M1 questionable because you can't even, or you don't even really make use of it. So what's the point of it? It doesn't even add that much to her current playstyle. Hell, let alone even necessary to begin with. This problem is made worse by the fact that her other dupes don't do all that much, giving you a minor increase in damage, which of course is pretty typical, but a lot of this damage percent does get saturated via other buffs, and hell, even some of her dupes, like her M6, aren't even active all the time. And it's not that Zhu Yuan's bad, she's gotten buffs via her other teammate options, such as Qingyi, who came out afterwards, and as well as Astra. But given with how she plays and her performance, the really only buff I can ask for is primarily a bump in damage. Besides just an obvious bump in damage, I would like to see a couple of changes made to her actual abilities, like, hell, even making the quick reload a part of the base kit and not a dupe, and possibly changing her mindscape to something else. See, when thinking about these buffs, I want something that's going to enhance the character's playstyle while not necessarily making them just straight power creep, and so I figured that a nice buff for Zhu Yuan, which would allow her to play better with her teammates, and as well as improve her actual gameplay, is giving her aftershocks. If Zhu Yuan did aftershocks while your current character was on field doing daze damage, such as Qingyi, I think this would be really cool to add to her potential kit. Additionally, I like to see improvements made, such as making her dodge easier to perform while in her suppressive fire mode, but then also a new move. As you may have seen with a lot of these other characters, when they add them to Lost Void, they are given a new move. I'd like to see a new move as well applied to Zhu Yuan, maybe during her EX special, or a part of your main combo to incentivize you to on-field her with a little more. Granted, that's not really within her playstyle like I was saying, but something to enhance her current gameplay. And while I could go on and on with a couple of these things, I don't really expect them to even buff the signature or buff the mindscapes. Really, I would imagine it is added primarily to the base kit, and so with that being said, I'll just summarize with the things I'd like to see. I'd like to see a new move added, similar to the other options added in Hollow Zero for the other agents, an aftershock while your current on-field character is doing their stun damage, such as Qingyi, and a couple of quality of life features, such as making her dodge easier to perform. Before going on to the next character, I would like to know what you want to see for these buffs down below, so if you have a buff suggestion or something that you think would be cool to enhance the character's gameplay, comment it down below. Next up, we have Zhu Yuan's partner in crime, Qingyi. Qingyi is one of those characters that is actually still performing quite well in the meta, however, her team options are limited to her playstyle. With Qingyi, I'm going to do a similar approach to Zhu Yuan, is I'd actually like to see her have aftershocks. Again, the idea with this is that she is going to play really well with Zhu Yuan, and they're going to have, like a buddy cop scenario where each of them are going to be proccing each other's aftershocks. Of course, with Qingyi, I would expect it to be a little bit more limited and not her entire playstyle. As to where Zhu Yuan, it's simply to get more damage out of the character. See, Qingyi right now is already pretty well off and plays pretty fine. I would just want a little bit more quality of life, as well as, again, new moves, like always, added to her. So, of course, with her buffs, instead of directly buffing everything, I would just make it easier to get off what she already does. So, for example, I would reduce the amount of stacks required to get her max buff from 20 to 10, halving it, meaning you only have to do one combo instead of 2 combos to get your full buff. I think this is the biggest buff for her generally, and it will allow you to play her without, getting carpal tunnel. Additionally, she could also get an aftershock attack that will allow her to come in and do a simple attack. Maybe after another character performs an EX special, this will, of course, give you a little bit of daze buildup, as well as generate you some meter, and this will just allow her to play and flow a lot more smoothly, or matching some of the newer characters. Of course, a minor increase in daze wouldn't hurt either, but other than that, I don't think she needs all that much. She could use, for example, maybe some parry frames during her mash basic attack, or just make it easier to dodge during that. Because one of the problems that a lot of agents have is that they have to commit to a skill, and it punishes you heavily for trying to commit to the skill, especially in these harder modes where you potentially could get one shot. So yeah, I'll keep Qingyi simple, as I don't think she needs all that much. I just want to see a couple things that'll make her more fun to play, and some quality of life things. Now on to Jane Doe. Now, I am going to warn you, I'm probably going to sound like a broken record by saying all these characters should have aftershocks. However, Jane Doe is not one of those characters. See, in my opinion, Jane Doe plays best as a hyper carry. Yes, I know one of her best teams right now is going to be Vivian Disorder team. However, in my opinion, Jane just simply plays better as a hyper carry. And so I'd like to see that part of her buffed. Of course, you're probably thinking that, yeah, just buff her damage, but that's not the only thing I think you should have. I think you should actually buff her current playstyle to have parity with modern characters. See, Jane has a couple of sort of like hit issues that aren't really by design, sort of like Ellen had, where she has a bunch of ramp up time for her passion state. There's a couple ways you could tackle this by, of course, increasing your outside of passion buildup, or giving you multiple ways to enter passion state. And of course, there is the spin that she has, her Xiaokou jump, which basically is a death sentence in any of the harder content. And so, how exactly do we buff her? Well, first off, I do believe some of her moves, like her ultimate, should do more buildup just normally, and or even reduce the buildup required. Yeah, I think this is a way to make Jane feel a little bit better by, of course, reducing the buildup needed. So like maybe applying a debuff with her abilities so that the enemy takes more physical anomaly buildup. Now, I know a lot of people are going to point out, oh, she already has multiple ways to increase buildup in her kit. Yes, I know. I want more. Apart from the ultimate, of course, I do want to see new moves added. Now, granted, I do think some of the moves in Hollow Zero don't actually play that well with Jane, or just feel bad to me personally. Primarily the one where you spin and slam down on the enemy. I don't think that should be added. However, the enhanced EX special, I do think looks really cool for an animation and could be added to her kit and still play pretty well. Additionally, there's a couple things you could do, like let's say making the EX special immediately put her into her bonus state. I think that would be pretty cool. But the main thing I'd like to see for her buff-wise is giving her hyper armor or parry frames on her Xiaokou jump, which is her spin move. One of the things with Jane is that you do really want to get the spin to keep up your state, as well as get some extra anomaly build up, right? However, the move basically punishes you for trying to play the character correctly, because you just sit there and, well, eat damage, right? You can't do anything with it. Unless, of course, you play Caesar, who arguably isn't even optimal, as Caesar will eat up some of your anomaly buildup. So giving Jane some hyper armor or parry frames on this would be really nice and match with the other modern characters, such as Miyabi, who has it on their basic combo. Of course, there's a couple other things hurting Jane, like enemy physical resistance, how there's not a lot of it, and just not having access to as many teammates that want to work with her hyper carry playstyle. But another interesting thing I could do that's a little wacky, but I do think plays into her mindscapes a little better, is give her, similar to Boot Hill and Star Rail's, break to crit scaling. Give Jane some anomaly proficiency to crit scaling. See, her M6 already gives you built-in crit and gives her a bit of raw damage, and I think they could enhance this and make her generally stronger by giving her built-in raw damage to her base kit. Not that this is something needed, nor do I think they should necessarily do this. I just think it'd be a funny little thing to enhance the fact that, yeah, you just want to build raw anomaly on this character and you're going to get some even extra damage just by getting free crit out of it. It's pretty much what her passive already does for anomaly specifically, but it's just going to apply to the rest of her damage, which I think would be pretty nice. Granted, like I said, not necessary. I just think would be a little funny addition they could do to play into her other parts of her kit. And in summary, I know it doesn't really sound like a whole lot, but a lot of the issues really with Jane aren't so much her damage, it's more so her ability to get her damage off. And so that's where I think they should target the majority of the buffs for her. Of course, a slight damage bump would be nice, and I do just think it'd be funny to give her some crit. But other than that, I think Jane is going to be fine. We just got to see the future of the teammates. Well, you know what? Can we just get an S rank Seth? Even, like, please, somebody. Next up on the list is Caesar. Caesar is one of those characters that I think honestly just actually needs a buff. Now, I covered this slightly in my Should You Pull video for 2.0, where I talked about Caesar getting her role replaced by Chufufu. And with that in mind, I think we should tailor her buffs around keeping her in that specific role, and just generally making her better to play and not feel like a wasted slot on some of these teams, as some of the things in her kit don't really make much sense in the modern Zenless environment. Now, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record if I say, oh, just add aftershocks to every character, but once again, we will not be doing that. See, Caesar has a bunch of different things that, of course, just make her kind of strange when compared to other units in terms of design. Kind of like how her additional ability is a debuff for some reason, despite not needing to be a debuff, and it has a range restriction, as well as the fact that her enhanced basic attack requires the use of an assist point. I don't know why this is the case, especially when it doesn't even group that well, and most players don't even end up using it or using Caesar in the first place. And like, the more you think about it, the more issues with her kit that sort of just pop up, like her dupes also not being all that good past the first one. It's like, yeah, sure, the M2 gives 500 attack added on top of her 1000 attack, but there are other issues that conflict with the M2 and like the M4, for example. And this is the other big problem that she has. Her ultimate is terrible, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start off with the main thing I would buff, which is going to be her core ability. See, her core ability, of course, is going to give you a massive shield, as well as 1000 attack to the current active character. This, I think, fundamentally needs to change to be all allies, because there are characters like Astra, or even Lucy, who buff all allies permanently for the most part if they are played optimally. And with Caesar's role of being a swap stunner and just comfortable permanent uptime character, it would be nice if she wasn't limited to hyper carry comps, because she does fall off in dual carry comps, such as Yanagi teams or Jane teams. And if they did this, we could avoid directly buffing her attack output and simply power creeping other characters, and just allow Caesar to excel in her flex slot. Again, with what characters like Astra do, I see no real reason why Caesar needs to be locked to only buffing the current active character. Buffing everybody would just make her better to play all around and make her have higher pull value. Like I said, with the additional ability, there's no reason for this to be a debuff or even have a range cap. I feel like the limitation here was probably to avoid something going on with Billy, but Billy's a 4-star who can get all the buffs he wants, really. I feel like there was no reason to give this a range cap. Moving on to her basic attack, Dead End. This has no real reason to cost an assist point, especially given the fact that unlike other defensive characters, she doesn't give assist points on ultimates. Before getting to that though, this move on its own needs bigger range and better grouping. I don't know why it's so limited and slow for the most part. You should be able to do more of this move, and as it exists right now, I don't see why it works the way it does. And speaking of those assist points, let's talk about her chain attack. If we are being 100% honest, Caesar's ultimate is terrible. Absolute dog water. For whatever reason, they gave her ultimate the worst days multiplier of like all time for an ultimate. Hell, Lycan, a base stunner, has like triple her stun multiplier on her ultimate. And for whatever reason, she does bonus days against only shielded enemies. Who thought this was a good idea? Like, genuinely, her ultimate is terrible just numerically, flat out, and unlike other defense units, she doesn't give any additional assist points for using her ultimate. So what was the point of this, Hoyoverse? Like, seriously, why did you design such a terrible ultimate for a character that's supposed to be doing quick swap stuns? It almost feels like a waste trying to use her ultimate in a lot of scenarios. Especially given that there's only like 4 shielded enemies that are lightning weak, mind you, not even physical weak. So genuinely, what was the point of this ability? This is another one of those things that needs a massive buff. They need to do so much for her ultimate to actually make this thing comparable to base game stunners, mind you. Like, this isn't even about damage at this point. It's like, why did they just make such a bad ultimate on her entire niche, which is being a swap-based character? This never should have happened. This ultimate needs a massive buff to functionality. And again, as I've been saying, those extra assist points. Because why is this character that's supposed to be there for comfort not doing that exact thing? I don't care if doing defensive assist with her is costing you less, she should still give you more assist points. Because guess what? This ability of defensive assist costing less, Seth does the same thing intrinsically. So why is Caesar still not giving you additional assist points like Seth is? This makes no sense. And speaking of assist points, let's talk about her M4 and why this is just comical character design to where it's like laughably bad. So her M4 reads, whenever you use a chain attacker ultimate, you gain 3 assist points. Pause. Why is this locked behind their ultimate when every other defense unit does it baseline? This is stupid to have for a dupe. This should be in her base kit. You can remove the chain attack part, nobody really cares, but the ultimate part is the big deal. Additionally, the other part of her M4 is whenever your energy is below 20, she can activate EX special using an assist point. Brother, why was this a thing? Why would you ever want to use an assist point for your EX special? This should not even be an ability. And you know what makes this worse? Her M2 gives you energy recharge so you can use your EX special more. What was the point of the M4 doing this? This is the dumbest ability in the game, I swear. And then guess what? It gets better. These have a 5-second cooldown on activation. Who thought this was a good idea? Like, genuinely. This is so comically dumb. This M4 should just be scrapped. Like, to remove the M4, replace it with nothing, and it would be better. And like, guess what? It gets better. Her M6, it gives you guaranteed crits on only specific abilities, and then gives you a little bit of extra crit damage. Wow, guys, what a fantastic character. Insane. Genuinely, Caesar's kit has so many confusing things that I probably didn't even mention in this section of the video, and I could go more into depth, but those are the key things I want to see happen. Her dupes just flat out suck for the most part, and are even counterintuitive in some cases. Her enhanced basic attack is just flat out bad for the most part, and her chain attack / ultimate is god awful. But the primary thing that will fix most of her issues is just allowing her to buff all allies at all times. Not really sure why it's limited in the first place, but yeah. I genuinely think Caesar does need a buff from a meta perspective, and I'm hoping that she's going to get buffed next before other characters do. BurnIce, the character that I've had a mixed relationship with, and I mean that IRL. But no, seriously, BurnIce, how would we buff her? See, BurnIce is one of those characters that sort of originated this whole off-field movement that Hoyoverse is doing right now of Zenless, and I do think it would be interesting to enhance that side of her gameplay. But at the same time, I'm not really sure what exactly they could buff without like making her go out of bounds for the bar of power, which that bar of power is just being worse than my Abby, without making her sort of samey with some of the other characters that I've already talked about, primarily with Jane and giving her crit scaling. While of course there are those people that do run crit BurnIce, which is a funny team, and it's warranted because BurnIce, despite being an anomaly character, has pretty good raw multipliers. I don't really want to go in that direction. I mean, it would be nice if her ticks over time did do more damage, and so giving you some crit scaling based on her other stats for this would be cool, but it's not exactly what I want to see. I would like to see a couple of quality of life things, though, to just generally make playing her feel better, and to where it doesn't feel as bad when using her in modes like Deadly Assault. In case you don't know, or haven't used BurnIce enough, BurnIce does run into a energy problem during Deadly Assault because of how long the fights are. She begins to run out of steam the longer the fight goes on because you don't have enough energy to use your EX special, and or she doesn't have enough build up on her own to actually proc her own anomaly. So one of the ways we can tackle this is by making her ultimate restore full meter for her whenever you use it. Currently it only restores half, and so using the restoring full meter whenever you do this I think would be really great. Additionally, we can have her restore half meter whenever she does a chain attack. This will, of course, give you more uptime while contributing to your anomaly buildup when playing this character. And I think this would be a great bonus to her, as the fact that she burns meter while you're actually doing these moves currently, specifically your chain attack, I do think is a detriment to her overall playstyle. And so those quality of life changes would be great to see. Additionally, you can make it easier to dodge with her dual flamethrowers. Hell, maybe you even add a dodge to her dual flamethrower mode, because currently she can only dodge with her single flamethrower. Now, of course, I'm fully aware that her M1 does change some of her beats buildup already, but I really want to see the meter buildup put into her base kit. And yes, I know you probably are expecting me to say it, give her an aftershock attack. Yes, do that. I'm not even kidding you. Genuinely, BurnIce was the character that sort of initiated this whole off-field thing, and I do think it'd be great to honor her by adding an aftershock to her that helps you build up heat. Of course, it would be a minor amount of heat, right? Maybe if your other character uses an EX special, BurnIce does a single aftershock attack, something like that. But I just want to see something that's going to help her build up in the long term, as well as just make her meter management that much better. As while I do think BurnIce is currently overrated in the meta, she's not the worst character of all time. She's still pretty solid and does have a variety of decent teams. And just enhancing her current capabilities just a little bit, I think would be nice, outside of actually buffing her damage, which I don't really think she needs. Yep, other than that, I don't really know what they would change for this character. This one I do think is a hard one to really analyze. And moving on to Yanagi. Don't. Just genuinely don't. Do not buff this character. Like, what the hell? She already is buffing Disorder and is basically defining all of the anomaly characters. Please do not buff this character. If I were forced at gunpoint to say what I would buff her, I genuinely could not come up with one. This is such a goofy character already. If I really had to, I guess I could just be lazy and say give her crit scaling for building Anomaly, like I said with Jane, but like genuinely, this character is insane as is and what she's already doing. I don't know like what they were thinking allowing her to buff Disorder. This has, in my opinion, been a bit of a mistake in terms of a design for other characters, and I don't really think she needs a buff currently as is. At the very most, the one thing I could say is maybe give her hyper armor on her basic attack 5 for both stances, as this would make playing her a little bit easier, as she does get knocked down from some of these bigger attacks. They could do something interesting, kind of like how in Hollow Zero, where she gets extra chain attacks for doing her swap combos, and even a free ultimate off, although at the same time I think that will play a little bit weird. But other than that, I genuinely don't know what they could do for her. I don't think this character needs a buff at all. I think she's totally fine. And so if you have a suggestion that maybe would enhance her playstyle, please comment it down below, because I really don't even know what to do with this character. Because I wouldn't even add a new move to her. I genuinely just don't think she needs anything. Lighter. Lighter's one of those characters that I also don't think needs any buffs, but it's not to the extent as Yanagi, as where Yanagi is just arguably broken. Lighter, genuinely, I just think needs a bit more extra ways to generate meter. It feels kind of slow playing him and building up his meter for the first time. Granted, at the same time, I do think this could go a little too far and make him unnecessarily stronger than he currently is. But in my opinion, right now, he's totally fine. If anything, what they could do is give him a little built-in energy recharge or better energy gain on his abilities so that he can get more EX specials off, so that you can get a little more fun out of playing him on field like you should. Other than that, though, there really isn't all too much I would add to Lighter, as he is already really strong as is. If you really had to force something out of me, I guess you could add in like Anomaly to his additional ability so that he can work with my Abby and still use other characters, but really, he seems totally fine as is. Moving on to Asaba. Now, Asaba is one of those characters I do actually think needs a buff, and it's not going to be what you think. No, I'm not going to add Aftershocks to another unit. No, I genuinely just think he needs a slight increase in damage, as well as no cooldown on him applying stacks. Currently, there is a cooldown for him applying some of his electric ticks. I don't think that cooldown should be there, and if they remove this cooldown, it will allow you to just keep going with this combo, like infinitely, pretty much. This will be a massive increase to his current playstyle, and you won't have to tweak his damage all that much. He'll just be able to keep doing what he's already currently doing. It'll be really nice to play him, and he won't feel nearly as bad as if they do make these changes to allow you to always get electric ticks to apply his marks, do his dashes. He'll just be able to output that much more and feel better for players generally. Other than that, though, I'm not really sure what they could change for him without ruining his current gameplay. And with Asaba, that's actually the last of the characters I would say arguably needs a buff. The rest of this is really just going to be some COPIUM stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, do this to this character because I think it'd be funny. All the characters beforehand, with the exception of Yanagi, could use some slight tweaks to make them just feel a little bit better and enhance their general gameplay. As for the remaining characters, being Astra, Evelyn, Soldier Zero, Ambi, Trigger, Hugo, Vlad, and Vivian, none of these characters I think really need a buff, and I think are pretty well designed for the most part. If anything, I would make the argument that Astra Yao should generate some extra energy for the team with her ultimate, just like every other supportive character, but other than that, there isn't really too much to be said. Especially given that she's already getting a buff with the fact that she's going to be able to be used with Rupture agents in the future. And so that's where I leave the floor to you. With the remaining agents, as per the list, I want to know what you guys are going to buff for these agents, if you think they even need a buff, because I'm of the opinion that everybody else doesn't really need it. See, with this video, I was trying to avoid stuff like, oh, just give X character a better supportive set, as we are already seeing that in a couple of cases, like with our stunners. It would be nice to see some better sets for a few characters, like for example, Jane Doe, but it's not really all that necessary. And of course, there are characters like Miyabi who definitely do not need a buff. Dear God, they would be insane. And so yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitch, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.